Hello everyone, and thank you for listening to my research study presentation about the defamation case New York Times versus Sullivan. In this case, we see on one side Sullivan as the plaintiff and on the other side the New York Times as the defendant. Sullivan sued the New York Times for defamation in consequence of the publication of an advertisement appeared on the newspaper regarding the civil rights movement in the South and the public officials' response. The defendant did not retract the publication as requested by the plaintiff. The advertisement was denouncing the spreading of terror against people actively involved in the civil rights movement, accusing the officials in charge at that time. The full-page advertisement was including some false details, as we read in the case summary, but was not mentioning the plaintiff by name directly. However, Sullivan felt his reputation was damaged by the New York Times publication, therefore defamed, because he was one of the 3 commissioners of the state of Alabama with the responsibility of controlling the police actions. The defendant, on the other side, declared to have no reason to believe that the advertisement was containing false accusations and did not feel necessary to conduct a more accurate research about the fact described. The problem for the defendant was that, in general, a plaintiff doesn't need to be specifically named in the publication to be recognized. Identity could have been inferred just by the general knowledge that he was one of the few in charge. On the other side, in order to accuse the New York Times of defamation, Sullivan had to prove that there was actual malice to prove libel. As we read in Carla Gower's book, a public official is expected to have enough strength to sustain public critics. This case presented many elements of defamation. There was a publication, possibly identification, and a defamatory statement. The plaintiff could accuse the defendant of libel and sue it as an individual. But because Sullivan was a public official, the level of fault, falsity, and injury were too general to win the case. It was difficult for the plaintiff to prove actual malice, meaning that the New York Times knew or should have known the falsity of the statements. Although the jury, under the Alabama law, declared that injury was presumed because the statement was libelous per se, and awarded the plaintiff with $500 damages at the expenses of the defendant, the Supreme Court, invoking the First and 14th Amendments of the Constitutions, defended the freedom of speech and press, limiting the local power of single state. The Supreme Court blocked the Alabama request of damages as a result of libel accusations against a public official, regardless if the accusations were false or true. Also, the fact that the New York Times did not know or should have known whether the statements in the advertisement were true or false did not prove actual malice. Moreover, according to the case brief report, Justice Hugo Black argued that the First and 14th Amendments of the Constitution do not merely delimit a state's power to award damages, but completely prohibit a state from exercising such a power. In conclusion, the defendant had an absolute unconditional right to publish criticism of the Montgomery agencies and officials. As Carla Gower explains in her textbook, public relations professionals are very much exposed to liability for the statements they promote and eventually brought into a lawsuit. There are also many regulations at the federal and state level that need to be known and many other factors to be considered. It is crucial for public relations professionals to be well informed about the national and local laws about defamation. It is also important to reflect before pursuing a lawsuit, thinking about the nature and the level of the accusations, the source of the defamatory statement, the consequences of a legal case, and the effects of the public opinion. In order to prevent or refute defamatory accusations, the best strategy is to maintain a good online presence, to be able to respond quickly, and to make the desired message coming across a wide audience platform. Above all, public relations professionals should always back up their statement with supporting and reliable evidences in order to prove their truthfulness and to avoid harming other people's reputations.